Thank you so much. I prefer to shout. I didn't expect myself to be in the center of this controversy today. I'm not used to it. Regarding all those accusations about me being an anti-Semite, it's completely wrong. I really hate everyone equally. No, but when those Jews blame me for being an anti-Semite, which they do a lot, I'm not anti-Semitic, I'm just anti-Jewish. I said, all right then. Which is slightly funny as well. Anyway, I'm not good with this kind of cameras. You have to focus all the time. I'm sorry. Yeah. You know, I'll just I'll walk with it. Like, I'll do the catch spiel. Okay, I'm going to talk to you today about concealment, which is, I think, very, very, very interesting topic. History presents itself as an attempt to genuinely narrate the past.
Yeah.
But in practice, it hardly provides. In practice, what history is an institutional, orchestrated form of concealment. We conceal our shame. When you look at Jewish history, what you really see, a clear attempt to disguise the fact that wherever Jews go, somebody tried to kill them. This is Jewish history. This is the reality of Jewish history. They speak about, oh, we suffer and suffer and suffer. Why did you suffer so much? Did you suffer so much? No. That's it. Is it? I found out, I'm going to talk to you and then you'll have... This is the issue. Why did they suffer so much? This is the most crucial question they have to ask themselves in order to understand who they are and how to solve their problems. By the way, Zionism was highly engaged with this question. Early Zionism, was a clear form of self-reflection. Are you trying to bait me? What is this, man? It's very obvious. You know, as a Jew, I start to think that there is an agenda. Here, this is. I'm in the right, in my right. Palestinian history is almost as embarrassing. How is it possible that people are engaged in 100 years of a national struggle, liberation struggle, and achieve, again, sorry for saying it, fuck all. Fuck all, nothing. The situation in Palestine is now worse than ever. It's quite easy to explain. We'll probably deal with it in a few seconds. What about the Brits? As you probably know, there are quite a few British people in this room, I hope. As you probably know, your country has been engaged in numerous systematic genocides and crimes against humanity. And you have a beautiful Imperial Wars Museum. You could feature, in a moment of self-reflection, one of your genocidal events. But you actually decided to dedicate the second floor to the Nazi Holocaust. What did you do? You shoved your shame under the carpet. The Jews were very happy. When I come to Germany and I talk about this topic, German people ask me, and what about us? What is it that we try to conceal? Which is very embarrassing because the Germans, they know a lot about their past, a lot, even things that they didn't do. And I tell them, in Germany, you have to conceal the fact that you are actually very nice people. If Germans admit to themselves, look at Gabi, if Germans admit to themselves that they are very nice people, the guilt disappears and everything collapses. But the big question is, how do we maintain this concealment industry? Who decides what to suppress, what to shove aside, what to talk about? How those decisions are taking place? I look into it a lot, and by the way, by looking at it, I also try to read about it. Actually, the first that inspired me the most to look into it was Martin Heidegger and Jacques Lyotard, who actually referred to Martin Heidegger, talking about concealment. But then I found myself looking into George Orwell. And when I looked into George Orwell 1984, I decided that I had to understand precisely how did he come to such an understanding. Why did he build this imaginary concept of control opposition? And why was it Immanuel Goldstein, who was the figure? As I say, it was Immanuel Goldstein. It wasn't Osama Goldstein. Yeah? He picked a Jewish character. And I ended up reading Homage to Catalonia. And I realized that George Orwell was actually fighting within the, how they were called, Foreigner Brigade? International Brigade, in the Spanish Civil War. And I started to understand that quarter of the soldiers in the International Brigade were Jews, and they were burning. They were atheist Jews. We spoke about atheism. They were atheist Jews, good, progressive, anti-Zionist Jews, and they ruined Spain. They flattened the country. They burned thousands of churches. By the way, you'll notice that atheist Jews, they really don't like the religion. They hate the rabbis, they hate the synagogues, but they always end up burning churches. They never burn synagogues. I started to look into it, and I realized that what Orwell speaks about in 1984 is this form of concealment. What is it? It's newspeak. It's the attempt to reduce the terminology, to tell us what we are right to say, what we are not, what we should never say. It's restricting our language and eventually restricting our ability to think. I decided that in order to explain to you, and I'm going to shock some of you, and I hope that they are not as violent as me, because we may have a fight. In order to explain to you how they operate, I'm going to take the Palestinian solidarity discourse. And we will check one by one each of the terms that we are allowed to use. As you probably know, and as Jill explored, we are not supposed to mention the J word. Mr. Ali Abu Nima from Electronic Intifada, that I, for a long time, I thought that he was the guy that reduced the Intifada into an electronic blog. But then somebody told me that Electronic Intifada is probably just the name of a dildo or something. I communicated with him once in my life, and the guy told me, don't say Jew. Whenever you want to say Jew, say Zionist. And everything will be okay. We will have a lot of common ground between us. But Zionism, I would like to say, has nothing to do with Israel, but definitely has very little to do with contemporary Israel. Zionism was the promise to bring the Jews to Palestine and to form a Jewish nation state. From Israeli perspective, once this state was established, Zionism was over. Zionism is definitely relevant within the Jewish diaspora discourse. But Israelis, people like my parents, who were born in Palestine, two Zionist parents maybe, and myself, we were not educated as Zionists. We don't really understand what it means. If we are right-wing, it is because we are Israeli patriotic. You don't know what is the founding ideology of yourself as British. If you really want to go to kill yourself in Afghanistan as a British soldier, you may be a right-wing English, that's all. So when we talk about anti-Zionism, like all the Jews that we meet around in these movements, we actually fly way above the Israelis. They don't even understand what we're talking about. It is just a Jewish internal form of identification. It has nothing to do with Israel, the way Israelis think, and so on, and so on. Bullshit. Bullshit number 2, colonialism. Israel is colonial. They always tell us that we do have to refer to Israel as a colonial state. Israel is not. Israel and Zionism are not colonial project. Colonialism is a clear exchange, material exchange, between a mother state and a settler state. Israel is definitely a settler state, but where is the mommy? Who is the mommy? Mommy! My mommy is here, but I listen. You know, when you're kind of Jewish, you take your mommy. Jewish mother. No, no. Anyway, this is a crucial topic. So, why do we speak about Zionism? Why do we speak about colonialism? I tell you why. You're really burning me, man. Ken, it's not what you mentioned yesterday, the microwave speakers and stuff. Why do we speak about Zionism? It is very, and do not mention the J word, because it is very convenient for the Jews in the movement. As soon as we speak about Zionism, I am an anti-Zionist and I oppose all those things that the Israelis are doing. Wow, impressive. And why do we like to speak, why do they like us to speak about colonialism? Because if Israel is colonialism, or Zionism is a colonial movement, then we know exactly what to do. First it will be colonial, and then it will be post-colonial, and then peace will prevail. This is the Marxists. We have to fit the reality into the theory. In the scientific world, it works the other way. We have facts, and then we have to find a theory that may explain them. The facts. So, as you probably noticed by now, we have a resistance movement that is supposed to confront this vile Jewish state, but you can already see that our terminology is shaped in a very precise way not to offend the Jewish people. And we are very successful in it. Apartheid. We like so much to talk about apartheid. Again, why we like to talk about apartheid? Because we know what apartheid is. South Africa was apartheid, but Israel is not apartheid. Apartheid is a system of exploitation, a racially driven system of exploitation. But Israel doesn't want to exploit the Palestinians. It doesn't even let them in. It wants them out, as Alan mentioned. It's an ethnic cleanser. It's a nationalist, racist, ethnic cleanser. It's actually Nazi-like. But we don't want to say that it's a Nazi-like because then the Jews in the movement will be offended. And we don't care about Palestine, but we really don't want to offend the Jews. Okay. Exploring all those things really make me, an opponent of Jewish power. And you guess what? I am. 2 state, 1 state. There was like 2-3 years ago, are you 2-stater or 1-stater? 1-stater, oh, it's very bad, 2-stater. You know, masturbation. Masturbation is. I read about it that it's very healthy, and I tried it, and I feel good. So I confirm. But it's not something that you do in public. Unless you really... Listen, I'm a performer, you know? I like to say masturbation is not something that ordinary do in public, but pro-Palestinian activists do. They like to talk about the most irrelevant issue. What is one state solution? It's a beautiful idea. It's a beautiful idea. The only problem is that there is not a single Israeli that even contemplate the possibility of thinking about it in the future. There was one, Ilan Pape, but he lives in Exeter. Now he goes back to Israel. Let's see if he will keep talking about one state while being there. Because when he was there, he was a 2-stater in the past. Chameleons. It is pretty peculiar. We are talking and we have conferences. And Ali Abu Nima wrote a book about one state, and he really wanted us to believe that there is future for it because his mother really liked to eat matzah. This is what was with matzah bread. I was really impressed by the lines about the matzah bread. This might be the problem. It's a Palestinian matzah eater. It's a new type. But what are we talking about? Israel is the Jewish state. In fact, its legal system is ethnocentric and ratiocentric. From racial, I mean. The notion of peace as we know it, i.e. reconciliation, doesn't exist in the Hebrew language. The word shalom doesn't mean peace or harmony. It means security to the Jews. Very self-centric. A week ago, a leading Palestinian intellectual, and it's quite liberating for me to start to talk about Palestinians, I must admit. A leading Palestinian intellectual, Joseph Massad, gave a talk in Euston about peace and war in Zionism. And he was referring to the word shalom and shlom. The Palestinian scholar, and this is very troubling when you think about Palestinian scholarship, doesn't even know that the word shalom doesn't mean peace. It means security for the Jews. By the way, why he doesn't know? Because he doesn't read Gilad Atzmon. A Palestinian scholar teaching in Columbia University is a book burner. This is unusual. But it's usual within the Judified movement. He spoke in his talk about 1982 war that was called Peace of Galilee. He said, you see, they have a war, 1982, First Lebanon War, and they called it peace. No! They called it Shlom HaGalil, which means security to the Galilee. I, by the way, approached a few Palestinian friends of mine and told them, you know, this guy, Joseph Massad, is your scholar. He's a prominent scholar. He's obviously making a big mistake. I make a lot of mistakes in English, and people correct me. That's the way it works. Not that it helps, but they try. I told a few Palestinian Hebrew speakers, some of them speak Hebrew better than me. I told them, listen, you must contact Joseph because it's embarrassing. They told me, no, Gilad, we don't want to get into this issue. It's not complicated. So, okay. So we continue talking about Zionism, about colonialism, about peace, about one state, but it's kind of shooting flanks. We are living in an imaginary world. We don't really deal with the main problem, which is the Jewish state and Jewish power, and the fact that 80% of your conservative parliament and conservatives MPs are friends of Israel. They are members of the CFI, Conservative Friends of Israel. 80% of your leading party MPs are friends of Tel Aviv. How many of them are friends of Liverpool?
Didn't Cameron say that the Tory party was a Tory party?
Usually you used to stand. For everyone else, you stood when you said something. Huh? Disrespectful. Palestinian cause. Palestinian cause, a very problematic issue. What the fuck is the Palestinian cause? I'm really troubled by it. I tell you why. A, there is no A. B, because for many years I was sure that it was the right of return. In 1948, I was really sure, and I felt really guilty about it. And I thought to myself, it's not 67, it's 48. But what is the difference, to look at it from a perspective of time, between Tel Aviv and West Bank? This was ethnic cleansing in 48, and this was 67. But then, recently, I found out that the BDS movement that is run from Ramallah, the BDS is boycott, divestment, sanction. It's a movement that presented itself as a grassroots Palestinian movement representing 170 Palestinian organizations in Palestine. When they were formed, they had three, in the founding statement, they claimed to have three goals. The first goal read, ending Israeli occupation and colonization of all Arab land and dismantling the wall. So they were against colonization of all Arab land. This was very clear. This was 1948. Tel Aviv is built over Palestinian villages. Sheikh Munis, Tel Kabir, and so on. My father remembered these villages. Last year, without telling anyone, without informing anyone, they put a small change in this very important founding statement. I read it to you. Ending its occupation, so the BDS fight for ending Israeli occupation and colonization of all Arab land occupied in June 1967. They basically compromised on everything that seems to be Palestinian principle. Why? Why? I really tried to look into it. Why Palestinians would compromise in Palestine, compromise on such a principle? By the way, they never translated it into Arabic. I never found it in Arabic, only in English. Why? Because they want to appease the wonderful Jewish anti-Zionists. The Jewish anti-Zionists don't want to see Israel, their Jewish state, disappearing. Again, we see another form of concealment, and this time it's concealment within Palestinians who are collaborating with their Jewish counterparts heavily, and not in an honest manner. I, by the way, contacted a Palestinian intellectual. I won't tell you who he is. A person that I regard as the most important Palestinian intellectual, and I told him, Yusef, no, I'm not. I told him, listen, we have a problem. He was convinced that I made it up. I told him, listen, I have some mental issues, but this is not one of them. I didn't make it up. It took me 2 days to make sure that he looked, he sees it for himself. It's very easy to see. And then he told me, listen, this is obviously a mistake. It will be corrected within 2 hours. I gave him a month. I called him, he said, listen, this is not the most important thing. I said, okay, so if the right of return is not the most important thing, just let us know, because if this is the case, maybe we can have a peace deal within 2 minutes. Because the Israelis are pretty devastating by the right of return. And then I contacted the second most important Palestinian intellectual. And he came with the spiel. If this is true, this means that we are jeopardizing the right of my people on their land. We had it many times. I told him, brother, you let me know what you think. And after 2 weeks, he told me, Gilad, please get off this case. They will destroy you. I realized that there is no one to talk about, but he's a friend of mine, and I took his advice. And I stopped talking about it. I found about it. I was in your car, Gabi, when I found about it. It was June 11, and I kept quiet about it for 6 months. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. But then, I think January 12th,
No, 13.
13, January 13, I was a guest of Hezbollah in Beirut, and I was taken to Sabra and Shatila. And I saw the state there. And actually, the people in Sabra and Shatila were people that we don't really read in all these Western Palestinian collaborating sources. They really need a solution. The situation there is grave. It's the most miserable place I have ever seen in my life. And they need a solution. Either a solution within Lebanon, I think that so many of them would accept, which is impossible, or definitely celebrating the right to return to the land that belongs to them and to them only. But they are dismissed by their Judified Palestinian brothers and sisters in the West. And this is really painful to watch. And this is something, my name is Gilad, and I wrote a book about Jewish culture. But it is time is ripe for a Palestinian or an Arab, let's say named Jihad, to try to understand what is it that is happening in the Arab world, in the Palestinian world. Why they end up taking the money, every NGO in Palestine, almost every NGO in Palestine, taking the money of George Soros, a liberal Zionist who also funds J Street. Why is it? If the Palestinians won't do it, and this is their form of concealment, their situation will continue to deteriorate, and as Alan mentioned in the beginning, they may find themselves ethnically cleansed. Second Nakba, or maybe third one, because there was already a Nakba after 67 that nobody speaks about. Finally, BDS. This is something that I read the other day on Dave Icke's site, and it's a very clever point. BDS is another vague idea that we must follow. I have some problems with it from the very beginning, because I do believe in freedom of speech. And each of you believe in freedom of speech. And actually, I wouldn't mind to have here a rabid, ultra clever Zionist, and we could debate him. I think that it's a good idea.
Next time.
Not easy. They are clever enough not to come. But we have. By the way, what is the most amazing? I've never been member of the Palestinian Solidarity campaign, but I gave talks in a few events. I've seen it, and it's really great to see this room full with young people who care. You know, when you go to a Palestinian Solidarity event, you know, all I used to see is kind of, it's no offense to anyone, kind of, but geriatric, Judified, you know. And they didn't care about truth. They cared about maintaining their paradigm. Last thing, BDS. We all have to adhere to the concept of BDS. BDS means boycott. Who did they boycott in the last year? Ken O'Keefe, one of the most devoted activists this movement has ever known. Greta Berlin, the woman who formed the flotilla to Gaza. Norman Finkelstein, whether we agree with him or not, is a very devoted intellectual. Gilad Atzmon, pretend to be intellectual successfully. Yeah? Can you think of any Israeli that they've managed to stop in the last 2 years? No. So boycott is actually the measure that maintains the concealment. The second war is divestment. Now, this is not a problem because nobody understands what divestment is. It's a kind of, they invented the word for Palestine. This is the ultimate way to maintain zero activism. Nobody really understands what it is. But then, there is one word that is really powerful, sanction. Sanction is the most powerful political and diplomatic tool. Look what is happening in Iran. They are happy to negotiate because of sanction. Try to remember how devastating were the sanctions on Iraq. How many kids died? But guess what? There are no sanctions on Israel. The trade between Israel and Britain doubled itself last year. So, what we see here? Masturbation in public. Now, I'll have to start sum it up. What we see is a terminological field that is nothing from not different from a minefield. You cannot walk, you cannot think. If you even contemplate of the possibility of thinking individually, as Les mentioned, all you have is yourself, is the ability to close your eyes and to start to think for yourself. This is very dangerous because when you start to think for yourself, you will find the truth. I'm not more clever than anyone here. I just looked into it and closed my eyes and realized that it's not what they're telling us. And it's very obvious. Each of you understand what I'm saying. And I'm not talking about race yet. It will happen eventually. But I didn't talk about race. I talk about very simple political indoctrination. Who are the people that maintain this restricted terminology? Is the anti-Zionist Jews, whom we are calling anti-Zionist Zionists. How do they do it? They are funded. Who is the person who funds most, the institute, who funds most, if not all, progressive, and I'm talking about gays, and the gays organizations, and Jewish Zionists, and anti-Zionist, and ethnic groups, is the George Soros Open Society Institute. And it took me many years to try to find how they do it. I now have managed, I can provide you the links. There was a very interesting book, pretty devastating, by a lady called Sarah Schulman. I read it to you yesterday, Ken. It is called, check out the title, Israeli, Palestine, and the Queer International. Can you imagine, by the way, of a resistance movement that is running by queer? I tell you, I'm gonna throw this grenade. No. Resistance is a macho business.
Yeah.
Am I right, Ken? It's for men that are willing.
And women, and strong, powerful women.
No. The men don't move very far without women. You are willing to die. The willingness to die is there to appease the most beautiful woman in the village. So the women are needed. But we don't expect them to kill themselves, and sometimes they do. For sure. We have here the most vocal Palestinian on this planet. And she's more brave than any man I've ever come across. Naida.
Stand up, Naida.
And Naida is paying price for saying what she thinks. And so and I'm sure, I didn't discuss it with Naida, but Naida doesn't think, I'm sure, and you correct me, you shout, if you think that I'm wrong, that the Palestinian gays are going to liberate Palestine. He doesn't. And I also don't think that it's the role of the gays in Palestine to liberate Palestine. But anyway, this Sarah Schulman, and I can give you exactly the page, you can check it out, it's on my website. She wanted to do a BDS gay tour in America, to bring Palestinian gays to sell the idea of BDS. She needed $50,000, she missed another $30,000. She said, where do I get this Palestinian? They told her, why don't you call George Soros Open Institute? And she contacted George Soros Open Institute, and she wrote it. The guy on the other side told me, contact now our office in Jordan. It's all kind of it's quotes, yeah. I'm quoting almost verbatim now. She said she called Jordan, and the lady in Jordan told her, what we are going to do, we are going to send you the money to New York from Jordan, because Palestinian gays going to America will help us to push gay campaign in Iran and in Egypt. All right? Try to think what a Jew in New York is sending money to Jordan to fund Palestinian gays in order to have a revolution in Iran. This is the Arab Spring. Is it very surprising that this Arab Spring turned within 2 weeks into a fucking winter? George Soros. And by the way, I don't think that George Soros is necessarily a bad guy. He probably doesn't know the woman in, to buy a lefty is the cheapest thing. Have you ever thought? It's very, very simple to buy an academic specialist on nutrition. You come to him and tell him, George, I'm from Coca-Cola, we want you to write kind of a nice paper about Coca-Cola, the best thing for pancreas cancer. Then, are you crazy? I'm 65 years old, I'm about to retire, I have a career. You tell him, $5 million, man. So, crazy. Are you trying to bribe me? You tell him, 20 million. You start at 25, you have a deal. The same applies to an American general. I tell you, I want you to buy my missiles, blah, blah, blah. Listen, I fought in Vietnam, I fought in, not the, 70 million. He start. But to buy a union leader You put him in Holiday Inn in Leeds. Holiday Inn, travel lodge, bed and breakfast, and you don't have to tell him what you expect from him. He understands. I understood only recently that they tried to bribe me. They came with all this kind of offer. We will tell you, we will fly you, we will take you, we will put you in Holiday Inn. I didn't realize that it was an offer because it was so low. Because I'm also a musician, you know, so I'm used to staying in kind of nice hotels. Not that I pay for them, it's kind of the industry standard. Just, no, Holiday Inn, no. They told me, the only thing that we want from you, stop talking about the J, spoke about Zionism. And I really like to talk about the J. I mean, everyone has a price. But something more serious, Holiday Inn. Anyway, zoom out, we try to understand what we see here. What we see here, a vicious, orchestrated form of concealment. We are dealing with a devious form of control, opposition that operates in our midst. I just spoke now about Palestine as a test case. You want to do it? Speak about Syria. Exactly the same thing. Did it take you by big surprise to find that Ilan Pape and Norman Finkelstein and Tariq Ali signed on a kind of pro-interventionist petition 3 months ago? No. It didn't take me by surprise. And 9/11 is the same story. The control, opposition is there, putting into place all those measures of political correctness. And the problem with political correctness, that it is there to detach us as human beings from our most authentic perspectives. When I tell you are politically incorrect, what I actually tell you, you're probably right, but don't say it. No. If there are people whom you don't like, you have to express it. Because then we know who you are. You know who you are. And it is very tragic that this form of thinking is maintained Talmudically. You describe them as tribal operators or just tribal les. I don't remember what was your wording. But this is what it is. It's a tribal operation. It doesn't matter if you are Zionist or an anti-Zionist, pro-Syria or anti-Syria, the method of suppression is the same. Now, if you are dealing here with a method of suppression, it is very clear, very simple. The role of the historian should be like the role of the psychoanalyst. What the psychoanalyst is doing is unveiling the hidden. This is the role of the intellectual. And we have a lot of intellectuals. By the way, you may notice that in the Palestine Solidarity movement, we don't have any intellectuals anymore. They were all wiped out. Every time we have a person who can think, and there were quite a few of them, whether it is Shamir or Finkelstein, they are removed. I couldn't be removed because I never tried to take any position. So I'm free to say what I think, and I enjoy it. I love saying what I think. The role of the intellectual is very similar to the role of the psychoanalyst. We have to unveil, to get to the root of the pain. And to get to the root of the pain is to learn to think essentially, to understand the essence. This is exactly what philosophers are doing. And when you start to do it within the left milieu, they go, oh, he's an essentialist. This is exactly what you have to be. To understand the human condition is to understand the essence of the human condition. And the reason that the Palestinians are still living in refugee camps and in Gaza that is an open-air prison is because even the Palestinians are now so Judified that they themselves cannot contemplate freely about their situation. Definitely in the West, what is the situation in the West Bank and Gaza? I don't really know. I cannot refer to it. That's it. Should it?
What is J Street?
Sorry, Alan was just behind. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have a brief comment and then a question. How, to use the current vernacular, how the fucking hell can Israel be a Jewish state when a quarter of its citizens are Arabs?
Okay, this is
not a question. That's a comment question.
Yeah. Okay.
The real question is this: you and I share quite a few similar views.
Yeah.
But I think what you've just said has missed out something very, very important.
Very possible.
If you boil the Israel-Palestine conflict down to a sentence or two, it is truth versus lies.
Yes.
Now the problem is, the Zionists and the Jews, call them what the hell do I don't care. They've had unlimited resources to spread the lies. The truth tellers, be they you, be they me, be they Ian Pappy, be they whoever, we've had no resources because wealthy Arabs don't give a shit. Wealthy Palestinians don't give a shit. If
Okay.
the resources had been available to tell the truth, Zionism could have been beaten long ago. Yeah.
Okay, I agree, but here is my news for you today. This is a very successful conference. Look, the room is full. Soros doesn't fund this new truth movement, or whatever we are. The thing is,
Pure truth.
I don't need much to tell the truth. What does it take to tell the truth? When I'm asked in America, not in Britain, what can we do? And Tahra referred to it in a way. I go for the First Amendment. Find the guts in yourself to start to think to yourself and to say what you think. It is not very complicated. The facts are obvious. It's not very complicated to understand that we are dealing with Jewish power. Yet, most of the people in this room, I don't know in this room, but most of the people, when you're sitting in the train, wouldn't find the guts to say it as such. Now, by not saying it, you're actually put the Jews at risk. Because they are operating in a universe, in a strange universe, where they really start to see themselves as omnipotents. They do the most ridiculous things. AIPAC is going to the Capitol Hill and saying, listen, we have to fight for us. It's ridiculous. Zero sense of mirroring. And this is exactly the root cause that brings Holocaust after Holocaust after Holocaust on the Jews. So if you care and can present himself as a citizen of the world, and Alan, I'm not sure about myself. I don't know. I like to see people being patriotic. I don't mind it. But you describe it, Ken, I heard you a few times talking about it, and you describe it in a very beautiful manner. You speak about yourself caring for the Jews because they're fellow brothers, fellow human beings. So if you really care about the Jews, move beyond the political correctness, because suppressing what you really think would bring a disaster on them, and you even make more than likely a disaster on yourself. Because when they have disaster, everybody has disaster.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Gilad, what you haven't covered in that answer, and I admire the answer, but what you haven't covered is the way in which truth can be communicated generally to the public, because that's what's being suppressed, isn't it?
Okay, I thought that I tried to cover it. Our universe, and this is very interesting, Alan. I think that we are really in a moment of shift of consciousness, and more than that, the world around us is changing very quickly. I will share a very small story with you. 2 days ago, I had a massive concert in London, in one of the most important, beautiful venues in Europe, in the Queen Elizabeth Hall. It is something that I do every 4 or 5 years, and it's very exciting. It was my 20 years celebration of being in Britain. I'm supposed to be the busiest jazz artist in Britain, one of the busiest jazz artists in Europe. The record company thought, this is going to be very easy. Everybody likes Gilad, and so on and so on. And I realized last week, that actually not a single British media outlet covered the concert. Okay? So, I basically was banned probably because we have BBC Watch, a Guardian Watch, all these Jewish organizations, Jewish Zionist organizations. And guess what? I did it through my own network, through my own website. Alan, we are publishing in very similar website. I did it through Facebook. We did this thing through Facebook. We have now the capacity to change the world. And why? The people who, like Gilad Atzmon, have now direct access to me. So I communicate, actually, with 15,000 people, at least, on a one go. Every day. And usually my papers and my ideas are published in many more papers, so I have access to sometimes 700, sometimes 2, 3, 5, and sometimes 20 million people. This is something that The Guardian, the BBC could never provide. This is why this room is full today. Because we were 4 people that were enthusiastic about this concept, and we just let our people know. And we have now something that what we call viral. When you come with a very important paper, very important insight, you see immediately that it has thousands of likes on Facebook. We don't need money. All we need is, for the first time in our life, to be brave enough to start to see, to say what we think, and to think for ourselves.
But we haven't filled the Albert Hall tonight, have we, or today?
But
we haven't filled...
We filmed
Yeah,
this in
change
3
doesn't
weeks.
happen overnight.
In 3 weeks.
I mean, like, I can see from about 2 years ago when I started getting, kind of woke up and started seeing this sort of thing, and started posting things on Facebook. I was getting no response. Whereas these days, I've maybe got, maybe 20, 30 people that interact with those posts, whereas it started off with nothing.
now,
It's not massive, but it's something.
I agree, and obviously I'm doing it kind of professionally, and I can see a lot of response. By the way, one of the most interesting. Just a second, Elaine.
It's just something relevant to that, anyway.
Okay, go.
A year ago, I went to Russell Tribunal on Palestine in New York.
Do you stand up?
Yeah. A year ago, I just at short notice decided I'd go over to New York, Russell Tribunal on Palestine, be interesting, blah, blah. And I talked to some young students who were on campuses in the States trying to get the Palestinian, and they said, literally, this is a year ago, they said the previous autumn, people had run away from the Palestinian. No one would listen. I mean, they were, anathema. literally a year later, last autumn, they said people were seeking them out and wanted to talk to them, wanted to learn more. So that was in a year, in the last 2
Now,
years. In America, with young people.
You're right. Now, 5 years ago, this conference would face, this gathering, whatever we call ourselves, would face a colossal Zionist campaign. No doubt about it. The anti-Zionist utilizing Aronovich to write in the Time, Nick Cohen in the Guardian, and then Tony Greenstein et co., writing in this irrelevant lefty, Trotskyite, blah, blah, blah. You would see a unified front. This time, they didn't do it. Why they didn't do it?
Because they're scared of me.
Actually, they're scared of me. And they're scared of Ken. You know why they're scared of Ken and they're scared? Because I found out to deal with these people. When they fight me, I tell Yalla, bring it on. Bring it on. I'm big. So they say, Gilad Atzmon says the Jews run the world. I don't say it, So people say, oh shit, he's right. Where is he? Where is he talking? When they quoted, when I see the list of quotes they used in order to destroy, I'm really proud. Is it me? Wow. Well, I must. And unfortunately, every time I go to my talks, I am also there already. So no, I really cannot attend my talks because I'm already there. It's complicated, So this is the issue. We did something. We told them, bring it on. Bring it on. And they got the message. Nobody sold more Gilad Atzmon book than Alan Dershowitz. Bless him.
I keep thinking to myself, we're narrowing it down just to one part of the world.
You're right.
And it should be about the whole world.
No, you're right.
And truth is strange anyway. Sometimes it's like fiction.
You're right. This is why you're right.
And the reason I bring it up because George Soros, that's not his real name, is it?
No.
He's got, I can't remember his real name. He's also a Freemason.
This is not surprising.
No, it's important.
And it's used as a Freemason.
Soros is.
No, but I want to address because this is a very right. When I spoke about truth and concealment, if you would bring Paul Eisen could talk to you about exactly the same mechanism that we can detect in Holocaust. I said, if you want, we don't have the time for it. We can talk about 9/11. We can talk about Syria. We can talk about the transformation of our society into a machine that facilitates consumption.
Mind control, concealment.
Exactly. We can take a lot of topics. I decided to talk about Palestine because this is something, and Jewish. I decided to talk about Palestine because Jewish power is something I'm really interested in. I decided now to move on and to actually extend this issue, and I'm working now on Frankfurt School and so on and so on. And I realized that I again dealing with, because Frankfurt School, they're all circumcised.
But have you found that it goes right
Mentally and intellectually.
have you found that it goes right back to the masters called the Illuminati?
Yeah.
It goes,
But
they're the orchestrators of everything.
but
Yeah, but you still got to point them out. You still got to highlight who the hell they are, right? And at the end of the day, one of the centers of that influence is in the.
for me, by the way, it doesn't matter.
It is based on a Freemason society anyway.
For me, by the way, it doesn't matter who they are. What I'm interested is in the method that is used in order to suppress, and who is providing us with this method, how they are disseminated, how they are developed, and this is what I try to do in my research. I see here Chomsky, yeah? Chomsky is a nice guy. And he's a liberal guy. He's a liberal guy. But when Mearsheimer came out, Mearsheimer and Wald came out with their book about the, how do you call it, the Israeli lobby. The Israeli lobby. It was him in Democracy Now. You don't know Democracy Now, but it's kind of the biggest progressive TV, slugging them off. So how good could he be?
He's half baked, isn't he? He's an apologist. He doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it,
Yeah. So I have respect to some of his work, but why did he do it? Is it because he's a devious, evil guy? I'm not so sure. Maybe he's just a tribal operator and himself didn't understand what he's doing. This is what I try to find out. I actually don't like to talk about Jews. I never speak about Jews. I speak about Jewishness. I speak about the ideology. This is what my book, by the way, buy my book. But you know, and I also realized that the Jew, what is the Jew? The Jew is actually, this is a joke, yes, usually I have a drummer, so I have a crush. Yeah, I'll do that, you understand it this way. The Jew is the character, the Jews, who are the Jews? The Jews are the people who give bad name to the Jew. Think about it. Last question? Yeah.
On speaking out or keep talking, which is where we got our name from. The first thing I discovered was that if you are targeted by a group and you're the only one, then the biggest problem is to get one other person to support you in public. Because if you're the only one, everyone else clams up and you lose. As soon as one person speaks out, then the threshold's lower for the second and the avalanche starts. Yeah. You're well on your way, but if you're in a membership organisation and you're targeted, that's
this is a very crucial point. One of the most important method in play to suppress opposition was all those organizations. What did the PSC did in the last 10 years? They restricted the terminology. People like Francis, who didn't fit in, because he thought that Israel is the Jewish state, so let's talk about the Jewish state. They were kicked out, and they've managed to maintain the resistance being dysfunctional, operating as controlled opposition in order by maintaining those organizations. And then we eventually, after a while, we found out that it was George Soros who was putting very little money. How much is it to fund Sarah Coburn or whatever his name? It's not very expensive. Okay, so this is the story, and there is one thing that you have to understand, and this is why our situation is so devastating, and why we are in great danger. What is capitalism? Capitalism is a very, very hierarchic, competitive system. If you go to a school and you are excellent, you will end up in a very good class. You will end up in a very good high school. If you are very good in high school, you end up in a very good university. If you end in the top of this very good university, you're probably going to end up in a major bank, on a corporate system, or whatever, in politics. And if you are very, very good there, you will get to the top. We are dealing with very, they're not nice necessarily, but they are very clever, they're very good in what they're doing, and they survive highly competitive system. In Israel, Asbara, propaganda. It's all run by private companies. They produce campaign, they are under scrutiny, they have to provide. What does it take to become a union leader or a PSC leader? You spoke about Betty Hunter that never read a book. We are dealing, the people who are maintaining the resistance in the current Jewy world are the most stupid on this planet, not most stupid people on this planet. They don't stand a chance. Look at what is happening in Greece. You know, they have a banker who brought a few other bankers to run the country, and the unions, bunch of idiots. They bring the people to the street, but the people want to eat. We are hopeless. The only way to break out from it is for us also start to be very good in what we are doing, and we have competition. I have to compete with Ken O'Keefe, with Les, with Alan Hart. We have to provide, he's going to do a TV show that's going to be brilliant, and I'll have to write great paper to compete with him on the rating. And this is how we will get better, and we will knock them down.
Thank you.